So, good morning! Yay! Still some little eyes, but also some big eyes. How was the damage from yesterday? Not too bad. The biggest damage, those people are not here yet. Okay, it's good to see you all again here. A special day for the bar camp on Saturday. Who has never been to a bar camp? Who does not know about it? Okay. No, yeah, a special welcome to you all. We will explain a little bit. It's not that difficult. As you can see, the program is empty at the moment. Of course, the big magic is that we all together make the program together. So you will see that in a minute. I will ask some speakers who say, I would like to talk about these kind of things. Can be very different things, can be technical, can be project management, can be about something completely different. But also on the other side, if you have reasonable questions, we have a lot of specialists here on different kind of subjects. If you have a certain question, please step forward, ask your questions, and somebody will say, hey, I can help you. Because that's the magic of today. So, it's very easy. Who's the first one who says, hey, I would like to talk about something? I would like to talk about something! Yeah! What a big surprise!
It's just because I like to hear my own voice. Yeah. Okay, I am sure you all have deep and important questions about TYPO3, the TYPO3 Association, and things surrounding that you don't dare to ask. Therefore, I am proposing the TYPO3 All Questions Answered session, where there are no stupid questions, just stupid answers. So you can ask anything, and I will be there. I hope that maybe somebody else in deciding roles in the TYPO3 Association, like the Daniel over there.
I will be there as well.
And Edward from the Control Committee will be there to try to answer them in the best possible way. And very often, we get some really interesting conversations with stuff that we actually take with us back as well and bring change to TYPO3. Hallelujah.
So, how many people would be interested in that session? Do you have an idea? Just about 5 to 10 people. Yeah. Okay. 5 to 10. Yeah. Okay. So, thank you, Matthias, for the first. So, who's next? I already see somebody coming.
Hi, I'm Hannes. If you don't know me, I like to talk about performance. And this time I brought something a little different because when I thought about what might be a topic to talk about, I noticed that I've been working with website performance topics for more than 20 years. And my talk would be just my personal journey over more than 20 years of fiddling around with website performance. Some looks on old techniques, walking down memory lane together. You won't learn anything useful for today, most likely because I will talk about the past. But if you're interested, raise your hands.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ja. Zet even niet wel bij. Okay, and who's next? Thank you, Michiel.
Yeah, hi. I can do a talk, maybe together, about upgrading TYPO3 websites from one version to the next and what tools you can use to make your life easier doing that.
I was expecting a lot of hands, so that's always the big questions. I think with everybody we can share a lot of experience because everybody knows a little bit from everybody. Thank you for that, Michiel and Daniel. So next, yeah, Martin.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. I'm Martin from Midveld. I have a pet project that I can talk about. A while ago, I built a linter for TypoScript that allows you to assure code quality for TypoScript. I can introduce it, how it works, what you can do with it, how to integrate it, and I would also like your feedback on what it's missing.
Okay, 5 to 10 people.
Okay.
Yeah. Sounds
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you, Martin.
What was the topic? Let's call it TypoScript linting.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Can you please state your name?
I'm just here for support. Okay. Thanks, Matthias. Hi, I'm Jaap.
Okay.
I'm new to this community, so this is my first time here.
If I may interrupt, you're not completely new because you are already at the Code Sprint in Düsseldorf.
Yes, I was. Yeah, but that was a different story. But I would like to talk with you about inter-community collaboration. TYPO3 is a PHP project, but there's more around us. And I would like to help you to understand the rest of the ecosystem and how we can learn from each other. So,
Okay. How many people are interested? Yeah, 5 to 10 people. Yeah. No, thank you very much, Jaap, for your contribution, and Matthias for your support. I saw some fresh new faces, but I suppose I should not put your microphone right into your face right now. Good morning, and good to see you again. Did you go to the next cafe in the central of Venlo last night? Closed it. No Roesti. Okay.
What I've noticed in the past is that people are using fluids only mainly by tags and not the inline notation. And using inline notation in your fluid templates makes it a lot cleaner and readable. So I'd like to do an explanation how I work with inline notation in fluid and make it more readable than it's normally done by most of the people. So who's interested in that? Clean fluid. All right.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks, Patrick. Some more topics. A lot of development topics. Daniel.
Yes, sorry, I'm also a developer, so I can develop again. Not a proposal, but a wish. I attended Matthias Novak's workshop 2 days before, and we also had domain-driven design talk yesterday here. And many of those aspects revealed to me why TYPO3 is changing in certain ways. It makes it more obvious and clear to me. But yeah, being at that position right now, it feels like it might not be obvious for many other people. And maybe someone can introduce those TYPO3 or those software architecture designs to us so that we can foresee and understand why TYPO3 is changing in the way it is right now. So if someone is able to talk about that, that would be very interesting, I guess. Also for us developers to adapt those concepts in our own extensions and projects.
Okay, who is willing to share those kind of feelings and who has that, can have that discussion? No one. Okay. Thank you, Matthias.
It's also possible to do what's called self-help. I mean, discussing questions together might also help you. And I think it's important. This thing about ice cream cone. It is important that you dare talk about your ideas and your thoughts, and nobody knows everything in TYPO3, right? Benny Mock doesn't know everything about TYPO3. When he wants to see how he can do something in TYPO3, he goes and checks the news extension. How does Georg Ringer do it? So nobody has the perfect answer, right? And if everyone chips in, you can make fantastic stuff.
Yeah, so in order to go to that path, so I could just show what I understood thanks to the workshop, and maybe others are interested in as well. So more like a discussion and question answer, so finding out ourselves. Would anybody interested in that? Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm a software developer, not a marketing guy, so I'm not able to communicate that properly. So.
What shall I put as the topic of it?
Software architecture and its influence in TYPO3's future.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel, for raising these topics, and also Matthias for the additions. And I think that's really the valuable of today, to have these kind of discussions. So thank you very much for that. And let's see. Some more people who say, I have these kind of questions where I'm looking for some answers or some discussions. Yeah, you are allowed.
I have a question. So, agencies out there. We've had we're moving towards a situation where you can't sell a TYPO3 website as the only way to earn your money. You have to sell things in between all of your site relaunches. And is a site relaunch really what you want to do, or should you just rely on upgrades? These kind of questions, I think, are really important for the future of agency life, and I would be really happy to hear how agencies are thinking in that way, because I think it's important for the future of TYPO3 that we talk about it and align on how to actually earn money over time on TYPO3 and not rely on just big investments every 3 to 5 years.
I think a really good one. How many people interested? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. About 5. Michiel? Sorry. There you go.
Yeah, at the coffee table I heard somebody asking about design system.
Oh. So, who was that? And you were referring to the last talk yesterday? Okay, and to discuss about it, to go further, what can we learn about it, how can we adapt it? Yeah, okay. How many people will be interested in that session? 1, 2, about 3, 5. Or you want to have this one?
Who is doing it?
Here you go.
Okay, I know a little bit about design systems because we use one at our own company. So, and I'm involved in the NL design system as well. So, yeah, I can do a little explanation about how we work with the design system and what advantages it has for us. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. Can you do a cache clear? Just looking up how many sessions we have, because I think a lot of sessions will be interesting for a lot of the same kind of people.
6, 7, 8. Ze zitten in principe
19.
voor 19.
Ja. Nou, we hebben 2 overmorgen. Dat is goed zo. Nou, ja, dan. Yeah, we just make a quick inventarization. We are about 8 sessions at the moment, and we have 10 slots when we do 2 sessions parallel. I think it's the quality of the session is more important than the number of the session, and I think also a lot of people will be involved in the same kind of sessions. Shall we make a program for this, or somebody else says, I really have something that we would like to discuss? Okay.
So I'm Walter. I'm a web developer, and next year in Europe, accessibility will be mandatory for a lot of websites. So I'm looking into it, and so I would like to discuss tools to test accessibility. So I know a couple, maybe you know some more, so we can make like a list to be prepared for next year. So.
Okay. No, but just a question. You have something you want to show as well, and to discuss.
Yeah,
about
I can show like a couple of tools I know.
Yeah.
I can help you a little bit because I know a lot about accessibility.
Yeah. Okay. So, good. So it's more like a discussion.
Yeah.
So accessibility tools.
Yeah. I think it's an important discussion, and it's also a different kind of topics compared to the other ones. How many people would be interested in that? Yeah, quite some hands. Okay, thank you very much for this contribution. So, somebody up for the last slot? Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, one of my passion projects is PHP Documenter. PHP Documenter is a tool for documentation, and we all know documentation is important, right? How many of you are actually writing documentation? More than expected. That's nice. But I would like to talk with you about documentation and how you can make your documentation more alive.
Okay, how many people will be interested in that? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Everyone who didn't raise their hand before.
Yeah. Okay. Then I think we're all set. Okay, so we're not allowed to add anything more. So, Jonathan? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Dan. Patrick and me will do the session planning, and then we see each other back. Yeah, I think in about 15-20 minutes. So we'll be a little bit ahead of schedule, but that's always. It's in the start of the morning. That will be fine, and then we have plenty of time for today. So thank you very much. Have a good break. Have a good coffee. See you soon.
All right, there we go. We start a bit earlier, and maybe some more people will join us, but that's totally fine because my first slides are irrelevant anyway. As I said, when I came up with this session, I noticed that I've been working with website performance for more than 20 years, which implies that I'm one of those very old men in the room, which one might say. I'm 35 currently, so you might have an idea of where this is going. So, small introduction from my side. I'm Hannes, hi. I love website performance and security. That's what I have some sort of passion in. I'm doing this professionally since 2007, and I'm working at Midvolt. Spoiler, also since 2007. This is an old picture of me. I used to have more hair, but then I got older, basically. So, where did it all begin? Why this talk, and how did I get in contact with website performance? Was pretty easy. I bet no one will be surprised. It was Counter-Strike. Who played Counter-Strike 1.x back in the day? Okay. So, when I was around, I would say 12 years old, the cool nerds played Counter-Strike. The really cool nerds had a Counter-Strike clan, which is basically just a bunch of people playing together all the time. You need at least 5, because if you play competitive, you play 5 versus 5. That implicated that, of course, we need a clan website, because you have to have one if you want to be a cool clan. So I said, yeah, well, that's no problem. I'm 12, and how hard could it be? So I started researching what do I have to do to build a website. And most of the tutorials said, well, you need a design, and to do a design, you need a program to create graphics, images, whatever. Luckily enough, Photoshop 6 was out, and I bought a very, very cheap Photoshop 5 license on eBay. I think it was like $8 or something. So I had the first part that I needed because I needed to create a logo, fancy design, whatever. The second thing I got, which was included, was Image Ready. Who used Image Ready, or who knows what it does? What does it do? Or, in different words, what did I use it for? What do you assume? No. I could have done all of this, but I simply used it to create animated GIFs. Nothing more. I was 12 years old, maybe 13, I don't know. And of course, I needed some sort of web server. I'm not sure if I use XAMPP. I'm pretty sure I used WAMP, but whatever, I need to have a web server on my computer to build this website and test it, and whatever. I didn't even know what web hosting was, so I just wanted to have a website and it should be working on my computer. So I took all of this, and then I did this. There was a tutorial that told me there are no div containers. Use a table, put images into the background, and then you have a nice grid design. Turned out not to be the best idea, but I did it anyway. And this is roughly what it looked like. Unfortunately, I do not have this website anymore. I searched some old hard drives, but I couldn't find it. So I rebuilt it for this presentation, but not creating logos or whatever. But the first thing I did, of course, I created a logo. We needed this because every site has it, and a cool clan has a logo for whatever reason. And of course, we also had a banner. This was pretty fancy. I don't know if you can really see it up there, but it has a flashy effect on the banner.jpg because Photoshop could do all that. And of course, the sunlight effect, which was used by everyone back in the day who had a Photoshop license. It was cool. In this case, this is plain CSS. I don't use Photoshop anymore, but I used it back then. And like I said, of course, I created some animated GIFs, which did basically exactly this. And yes, this is what it really looked like, but now it's a CSS. Of course, we had a visitor counter. Spoiler, it was low and it stayed low because nobody gave a shit about it. And yeah, we had a content area. So this is the website I built. I was pretty happy. It looked awesome. but then this came. This is an actual picture I took a couple of days ago of the modem I used back then. If you open the website on your local machine, it was really fast, it looked really great. Then I uploaded it to some web hosting stuff I had with my ISDN contract or my parent set or whatever. And I opened the website and boom, it took 2 whole minutes to load. This is a 40.4 kilobit modem or whatever, so it was really, really slow. That's the point where I skipped all of doing a clan website. I threw it away. 1 or 2 years later, a friend of mine built a real one that was actually usable because it didn't use like 2 megabytes of images. But that's what was the first time I somewhat got in contact with website performance. This is what I ended up with. And I put this project aside for like 2 years. And then my local high school started an internet working group, which was basically a couple of students and 1 teacher. And this was the actual website that my high school and Martin's high school had. So we started this project, let's redesign it, let's make it better. And this is what we ended up with. Quite a good step forward. This is from 2004. Back in the day, that looked pretty okay-ish. So this is what I did when I was 15, maybe 16 years old. Turned out, didn't stop there. I was somewhat haunted by this topic. After high school, it was time to find a profession for me. So I started my 3-year apprenticeship at Midwald in 2007. And this is the time where I got in touch with TYPO3, but also Mambo, which was later then called Joomla, Web Edition, WordPress, all kind of content management systems and shop systems. And I learned a very important lesson from all our customers about website performance, which is pretty simple. If there is poor website performance, it's the server's fault. Naturally, working at a web hosting company, this is what you deal with. So I started digging into performance of web servers. I read and learned a lot about PHP. If you use it as CGI, fast CGI process manager, mod PHP module, what are the implications regarding performance and so on. And of course, I also learned stuff about APC, APCU, OP-Cache, and who remembers eAccelerator? Yeah, I learned a bit about that too. Of course, the PHP side is not enough. You have to learn about how to properly configure MySQL server, how to optimize queries, how the system itself works under load, load 1, load 10, 5, 15, whatever. I learned about I/O. We just talked a few minutes ago about the time when we offered SSD hosting, which was the totally new stuff. Beforehand, you had hard drive, they were slower and so on. And because all of this was not enough, and I really like pain, I also dug into strace. I'm not going to talk about strace, just in a few words. It's a program that lets you track the Linux system calls that another process does. So with strace, I started digging into what files does PHP access and so on. And I still use it. And I can still tell you, based on an strace log, if a TYPO3 website is cached or not. But that was, again, not enough. Now the server was fast, but we have problems with application settings. And you might remember this one. That was basically every day one customer complained that the website was slow, and I fixed it by setting config no cache to 0. And then my life sometimes simply sucked. I don't know if you can see it. If you set config no cache equals 1, and then add a comment in the same line, it's the same as if you put config no cache 0 and add a comment in the same line, it means 1 because this does not equal 0. So cache was deactivated. And you might remember the good times back in the day where you can set the no cache flag on a per page basis in the backend. And I once had to fix it using MySQL, or using SQL queries, because there were actually a very sophisticated backend editor who deactivated the cache on 1,300 pages in the backend. That was great. But of course, my life was not also TYPO3. I also dealt with WordPress. And what I learned was that WordPress, unlike TYPO3, has no built-in front-end cache. And there's actually a reason for it. There's a blog article from 2010 where they state, we do not want to have front-end caching as a core element because TLDR comments. We want to make sure that new comments are always shown and that the WordPress user doesn't have to fiddle around with it. So that's why in WordPress you, until now, have to use cache plugins, like a lot, to make it fast. Then I was basically done with the learning about the server side and the application side, and it turned out, goddamn, it's not enough to have a fast time to first byte. The website can still be slow. So I started digging into front-end performance, and that was a rabbit hole. I first started by having a look at the HTTP protocol, because back in the day there was no HTTP 2, there was just HTTP 1, and it has some limitations. First of all, the underlying protocol is TCP, three-way handshake, and so on. It's great because it makes sure that all your data is transferred, so you don't have missing parts of images or missing text on your website or whatever. But it also has head-offline blocking. Don't want to go too deep into detail here, but head-offline blocking in TCP is basically if one packet of the resource that you want to transfer is missing, it has to be resent, and all this time it's waiting for the missing packet, it blocks further requests, and so on. And also, HTTP1 used one TCP connection per request, and only one request at a time on this TCP connection. And then, on top of that, HTTP1 also has head-offline blocking in itself, because you can only load resources once the other resources that are needed before have been loaded. And the browser came up with a solution for this problem, because the RFC in one of the first versions stated a single user client, meaning, for example, a browser, should not use more than 2 connections in parallel to a server. Browsers didn't give a damn. They used 6. Usually, it's around 4 to 10, but most browsers used 6. 6 per domain. I come back to this later. And a maximum of 12 per tab. Again, asterisks in general. So, we had to deal with this HTTP1, and there were some mitigations to go around all those problems. First of all, CSS and JavaScript concatenation. Who used it? Who is still using it? Okay, so you just take all your CSS files, put it into one. Great, no longer you have to load maybe 6, 7, 8 different resources, but one, so you have one TCP connection, one CSS file. Same goes with JavaScript. Great, fewer connections needed, that's what you want. Then sprites or CSS sprites. Who used CSS sprites? Who's still using them? Interesting, I'll come back to that. But again, same story, fewer requests, fewer connections, faster website. Domain sharding. Who used domain sharding? 1. Do you still use it? Okay. So domain sharding is nothing else than loading resources from multiple subdomains. So this doubles your connections. You have 6 connections on www.domain.tld, and then you load your images from media.domain.tld, so the browser can use 6 connections times 2 in parallel on one tab. Crazy stuff we did back then. And we always try to prevent errors at all cost. The most common mistake was to have 1.404, for example, on an image, because the browser would drop the TCP connection that was used before to load resources if an error occurred. So you have one picture with a 404, and the browser would drop this connection and has to re-establish a whole new TCP connection. Sucked. Most people didn't know that, most people didn't care, but it was a factor. Now, we all know time is money and money is tight, as it goes in website building, but especially bandwidth is money, and money is tight. So I talked about the parallel connections you have in your browser, but of course bandwidth, like I painfully suffered from when my first attempt of building a website went wrong, is a problem. So we also have mitigations for a lower bandwidth. First of all, browser caches and compression, like this, for example, if you are running on Apache. You set expired setters, you use output filters like deflate, gzip, whatever, just to make everything you transfer to the browser smaller. CSS and JS minification, of course, drop all the comments and unnecessary line breaks and whatever, just to squeeze out some more bytes so that you can use the limited bandwidth that you have better. And of course, we did all this in the scope of above the fold content, critical CSS, whatever. I don't want to go into detail. It's just like don't load anything unless it's visible before scrolling. That's basically the story. So that's not enough. You gain something by compressing text-based files, but your real problem, as I also suffered from, are images. So we have to do image optimization. For example, lazy loading the images with JavaScript, something like lazy sizes, whatever you might want to use back then. And this is a very painful chapter of my professional life. I dug into image optimization on a deeper level for around 1 year, and I fiddled a lot around with lossy and lossless optimization, all the different formats and when to use what. But basically what we did is using JPEG Optim or JPEG Tran to do lossy optimization on JPEG files, because JPEG or JVIF, which actually is a format, is a lossy format. Stuff like OptiPNG. Who ever used OptiPNG? Do you like it? Did your machine burn? Because funny fact, OptiPNG does brute force optimization of files. It uses a lot of resources to an okay-ish outcome, let's put it this way, because PNG is lossless. You cannot do lossy optimization. And of course, same goes with GIFSYCL and whatever else there might be around. So this was all the stuff, plus some more, but I don't have the time for it. What I fiddled around with until the day that HTTP went on stage, in version 2 went on stage. Great. Now, what's HTTP 2? It still uses TCP as an underlying protocol, but they did something really good. First of all, it's a binary-ish protocol, meaning it's not based on text that much. Therefore, you can use header compression, which makes everything more efficient, faster, and more secure. And the main reason or the main difference between HTTP 2 and 1 is that the browser now uses one TCP connection for all resources, but does multiplexing on this connection, which means basically all resources are loaded at the same time on the TCP connection, which is good because you no longer have head-of-line blocking of HTTP 1. You can load all the resources at the same time, not only 6 or 12 if you use domain sharding or whatever. But you still have problems with TCP as the underlying protocol, because TCP itself still has head-of-line blocking. And there was a new feature which was called server push, still is called server push. Actually, it's still part of HTTP 3. Who used server push? Who still uses server push? Why?
It gives a good feeling. I know the problems with server push.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is that I would assume 40% of your users don't get server push anymore because Google Chrome dropped the support in September 2022. It was a great idea. So basically the idea behind server push was the server can decide that the browser has to get some resources and simply send them out. For example, I know that the browser will need this main CSS file at some point to load the website, so let's push it. Great idea, because you don't have to wait for the request of the browser. Not so great idea, because the browser does not use its cache. So you force it all the time. That's basically why server push is more or less dead, which isn't particularly a bad thing. It was a good idea, but the implementation didn't work out as it should. These are the slides for asking who used server push, sorry. Okay, let's wrap it up a little bit. HTTP 1, we use browser cache. We still do it in HTTP 2. Compression, yes, always good. Less bandwidth, great. Minification, still okay. Concatenation, who still does concatenation of CSS and JavaScript files? Who doesn't? Okay, for some parts. Yes, it depends, because there is no reason to do it regarding your TCP connections, but it can be useful because the compression might work better if you put all your files into one. And of course, there are some other parts where it's beneficial. But then again, you have to keep in mind that you cannot use fine-tuned caching when you concatenate. You only can say, let's say, cache this CSS file for 1 month, and your whole CSS is in it. If you do not concatenate and you have your 5 different files, you can more granularly define how long they should be cached. And the same goes with CSS sprites, or basically any form of image handling. Most, asterisks, but most image formats have very good compression, and the larger your files are, the better the compression can work. So creating sprites of your images might still be good, but then again, you don't have to do it. You do have to fiddle around with all the CSS stuff to show the right pictures and so on. So I would say in 99% of cases, you shouldn't use it anymore. But again, it depends. Image optimization, still a thing, but please use WebP or Aviv. There's Hive, but it's only supported by Apple. There's JPEG XL, which is supported by no one, I guess. So I would say use WebP, because it's broadly supported by every browser, I guess, and also use Aviv, because the browser support is growing and growing. And of course, don't use lazy loading anymore based on JavaScript. This has nothing to do with HTTP, but the HTML loading attribute, which does the same, basically. You cannot decide anymore how far the user has to scroll towards an image before it is loaded, because the browser does it based on heuristics and so on, but just use the loading attribute. And of course, you don't need domain sharding anymore, unless, for example, YouTube still does it. They use domain sharding for the thumbnails, but not because of TCP connections and so on, but because the system where the thumbnails are generated can directly deliver those thumbnails, so they load the thumbnails from the different subdomain. But that's not in regards of saving up TCP connections. And then HTTP 3 came. When I was creating this session, and I've got a look, I've got some more time left, I guess, I thought about, do I really want to dive into HTTP 3 now? And I came to the conclusion, no, but let's put up one more slide for this. Every time the internet moved forward regarding website performance, you basically had to flip the table and forget most of the stuff you were using to that point, and you have a very painful phase of transition where you have to optimize for both worlds. For example, you have to optimize for HTTP 1 as long as not every browser can handle HTTP 2 and so on. The loading attribute in HTML, same story. It took, I think, 3 years until all major browsers supported it, so you have to fiddle around with all the solutions. I remember writing a blog article, I think in 2020 or 21, where I described how to use a hybrid solution for lazy loading if either the browser supports native lazy loading or you also load the JavaScript and so on, and everything was shit, basically. So every time a change comes, you have to fiddle around with it, but that's just how life goes. So, before wrapping this up, just a few notes on HTTP3. For those of you who do not know, it is no longer based on TCP, it is based on UDP. On top of UDP, they put QUIC, which is a specifically crafted protocol for HTTP3. You have no more head-of-line blocking in TCP, because there is no TCP. But you, of course, have the problem that UDP does not care about all data being transferred. So they put this part into QUIC, using some TCP-ish-like features that are now handled by QUIC to get the benefit of both worlds. It has built-in TLS, which should be a given anyway. You would use TLS, SSL, HTTPS, whatever one might call it then, since HTTP2 anyway, because the protocol itself can be used for unencrypted traffic, but every browser says HTTPS is mandatory for HTTP2, so it was a given thing anyway, and they just built it into HTTP3 then. One of the major performance impacts besides QUIC is that QUIC or HTTP3 in itself allows the migration from connections. For example, if you're switching from Wi-Fi to mobile data, you don't have to establish a new connection to the server, which makes it faster. So basically, in most cases, HTTP3 isn't necessarily faster than HTTP2, unless, and that's the main reason why they created HTTP3 the way they did, is if you have low bandwidth, if you have a high packet loss, or, for example, a high latency. That's when HTTP3 really shines. In some other cases, HTTP2 might even be faster, but that, again, depends, as we now know from all the other parts I talked about in the slides before. So, that's basically everything I wanted to tell you. That was a very short version of my journey of 20 years of fiddling around with website performance, more than 15 years of these 20 years in a somewhat professional manner. A few things I learned. I skipped a lot of parts that I talked about in other sessions. For example, how to use Core Web Vitals, what is Lighthouse, how to measure all this stuff, what metrics you can use, but that would be definitely too much for one session, or for this session in particular. So maybe one day you will hear me talking about Core Web Vitals on a different camp. So, thank you. Now, do we have any questions? Any other personal stories? Any remarks? Yes, please. Excuse me? That I've ever seen, or the actual website that we put up, I think 1 or 2 years later, had a document load time of, I don't remember, 2 or 3 seconds. But we, in the 2 years between me building the shitty one and building an actual one together, we got some features in mind, like a guest book and a little chat and all this shitty stuff you did. And we had a PHP-BB forum. So let's say the feature set of the website grew in those 2 years, and that's why it was not all just optimization regarding performance and stuff. Let's talk about TYPO3. A fully cached TYPO3 website, if you measure it with the admin panel, should be below 20 milliseconds. I would say aim for 10. Then on top you have all the infrastructure stuff, network, whatever, So, but you usually should add up below 50 milliseconds. I would say aim for 30, unless you're in a really shitty, weird network. While testing, that's what I encountered. Don't use Wi-Fi. That's a bad way to test the website performance if you want to see how fast it can be, despite what it actually is on the user's end. And I think like 2 years ago or something, someone from the core team proclaimed you should be allowed 90 milliseconds, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but that's totally fine. Everything below 100 milliseconds, a person wouldn't notice it. At least that's my opinion. Any more questions or personal stories? Yes?
Regarding HTTP3, would you say it is a good thing to look into it for now and try to get it work with? It's with my own website.
HTTP3?
HTTP3, because I think not many providers have implemented it yet. I'm not sure if the pre-built packages of Nginx have it in.
Yeah, that's the point. Definitely look into it.
But for example, Apache has no package for it. And as far as I know, no one is working on it. So most of the HTTP3 traffic today is due to Nginx, which is, I think, in some kind of beta state. I'm not entirely sure, didn't really look into it. And the other thing is Cloudflare and so on. They simply activate it for you, or you can activate it. Yeah, it's worth a look. For me, it's the same thing as with AVIF. Now is definitely the time to look into it, to implement it, but it's not a must-have, from my point of view at least.
Which was a large performance.
Yes, that was a huge step
forward. And then again, it depends on your project. If you have a project that has an international audience, and you can assume that the connection quality of significant amount of people visiting this website is very poor, then you should put more resources into making it work. But otherwise, from my point of view, it doesn't really make a difference.
Pretty good, I think.
I don't remember the actual browsers that did not support it, or not fully, but it should be pretty widespread.
We can try.
Pretty good, I would say.
Of course,
it's always Safari, always enabled by default for some users. Sorry to say, but it's always Safari, always. Okay, any more questions? Then I would say thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.
TYPO3. We have nothing really prepared, but Daniel has a blog post about the subject, which he's going to try to get on screen.
Yeah. Don't touch it. No, don't touch it. Yeah, the connection, it's quite old already.
Yeah. So who does TYPO3 upgrades? Who does them for fun? Who does them for money? And do you know about TYPO3 Rector? Do you use TYPO3 Rector already? So not many. And other tools to help with upgrading? You just read the deprecation logs, or what's the method? Just bump the new version and then see what breaks and then fix all the breakage, or?
Yeah, maybe let's choose yours. Can I send those links to you somehow? Slack also?
Probably not a long URL, or is it?
So let's just head over to my website. There's one TYPO3 update. Which one on the left? Yes, so there are a couple of tools out there that help with updates to partly automate those updates. Who of you is already aware of the install tool where you have this TYPO3 extension scanner? Not that many. So that's probably not that important if you're just an administrator and using third-party extensions, because then you just check whether there's a compatible version out there and update. But if you're maintaining your own extensions, then it's very helpful to have this TYPO3 extension scanner in order to check your code, whether there are some deprecations. And there's also the TYPO3 scan available as a standalone tool on the command line, so you can also use that from your command line or within your continuous integration and stuff like that to automatically check for that. So that's also very helpful. And then, as already mentioned, there is a Rector out there, which is a PHP project. It's a command line utility, which you can run. And that's a general purpose program, so it's not intended for TYPO3 only, but for PHP in general. And Sebastian Schreiber started the TYPO3 Rector, which is then specifically for TYPO3, built on top of the general Rector implementation. And that comes with already rules implemented that allow you to automatically run code migrations, so it will update your PHP code of your own extensions to help you with that.
And also, it also does fluid template upgrades, and TypeScript to a certain level.
And flex forms, but only prior the version 2.0 release. Since then it only handles PHP, but yeah. Not sure when work will start on another tool which also then does fluid and flex form and TypeScript again. But if you need to do updates, also updating those files, then just use an older version, 1.x version of TYPO3 Rector. Yeah. So yeah, that's the blog post I've written because I've noticed it through the TYPO3 user group Munich, that they always ask for what topics are you having in mind right now for the user group. And TYPO3 updates, upgrades are always there. So that's why I've tried to share how I'm doing updates on my own. And the most important thing for us is have a proper setup. So sometimes the project wasn't created by yourself. So who of you also needs to update projects made by other agencies, freelancers, stuff like that? Yeah, not so many, okay. So you can have a look at the prepare setup, because that's what we do if we receive a foreign project. Those steps we walk through in order to have a proper setup to start with prior doing the actual update. And then more important for most of us, the actual update. So again, that's just how I'm doing updates right now, and that might change with every single update because you always learn new things. Or after a conference or barcamp like here. First of all, I'm only doing Composer, which doesn't mean it's not possible anymore to do it without Composer. But I guess the first step is more or less the same whether you're using Composer or non-Composer. I first of all start installing the newest version I'm wanting to update to. So for Composer, that means I'm editing the Composer JSON file myself by hand, removing the Composer log file and the vendor folder, and then update or installing those installations in order, or in case you are not using Composer, then it's just downloading the new source code of the new version and updating your installations in the extension manager. I guess it should be
Who doesn't use Composer?
Don't fear. It's okay. Yeah, at least what I'm noticing in the TYPO3 community that it's a bit diverging, and some people already feel bad if they don't do it that way anymore, so there's no reason to do that. TYPO3 doesn't plan to remove non-composer support, so it's still valid and okay. Even though I would recommend, but it's up to everyone. Yeah, the next thing we've already mentioned is the vector version for TYPO3 itself. There are also, it's like PHP and other versions are like TYPO3. Vector is a core like TYPO3, and then you have extensions in order to update TYPO3, PHP unit, and other kind of things. So you can add further extensions in order to update more code parts. So for example, if you are having many PHP unit tests, then there are also rules available in order to auto-update your PHP tests. Yeah, then after installing and also configuring, because Rector itself doesn't know from which version to which version I will go, you need to configure it, your target PHP version, your target TYPO3 version, your target PHP unit version.
It's very easy. This just installing it just is one Composer command. You do Composer require dev the thing, and then getting the config file into the project root is also just one command. So setup is really easy, and then you have one config file which you change. You set there the TYPO3 version you want to upgrade up to and including. And then you can do some settings, leave folders out by wildcards, so you don't scan those folders by default. And then you can just run the command, what is it, the rector process, and then the name of the extension folder. And you could do -- dry run to see just what it would change. And if you're happy with the change, you can leave off the dry run, and that will actually change the files for you. So it's really, setting it up is like really easy, and it's really, yeah.
I was just looking, I also have a blog post about what this can look like. Yeah.
Can we get more resolution on that?
No,
that's
next fine. So that's already the advanced version. So within the Rector configuration file, because sometimes you have your own code or something that's not covered yet. So I had that when I've started to update to TYPO3 version 12, and this is from the Ameos shop. We have one installation with the Ameos shop, and Ameos doesn't have Rector rules. So I had to write my own rules, but writing Rector rules doesn't mean you have to write PHP implementation to look at PHP code, but Rector itself is built with generic code modifications like rename a method, adjust the parameters, stuff like that. And those can be configured. So that's already the advanced version. So the first one allows you to, for example, to rename a class. So I may also, for example, replace this I phase with this context I phase. So just by writing, you could do it in one line, but obviously in order to put it on one screen, it's separated in 3 lines. I'm telling here Rector to replace all the usages of one class by another class, and then it will run through my code and do it for me. So that's what's basically happening, and below is just the same for method calls, so some methods were renamed. So that's what's going on under the hood. So I hope that removes a bit of fear to get in touch with that one, because it's really not that complicated. Yeah.
Another question is always, if you go from, if you're not going one version up, but a few versions up, then in between each step you actually need to visit the TYPO3 version in the process onto the latest version you want to go to, because you need to run all the upgrade wizards, which change the database fields, possibly, and move stuff around. And if you go from 9 to 11, you skip the migration steps from version 10. So there's an extension from
Nicole Cordes,
Igabrecht, on GitHub, and she made an extension that includes all the upgrade wizard steps from all the TYPO3 versions, so you can actually go from 9 to 11 if you want. Like you load up your 11 code base, and then you import the database from version 9, and then you can run all the migration wizards at once.
2 versions, so I think if you do from 9 to 11, then it's still included.
Okay, yeah.
From 9 to 12, you will miss from 9 to 10 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the question was, the TYPO3 is always shipping the update results for 2 versions, so if you are going over more versions, then you need that. So that's the package at packages. So even if you don't use Composer for managing your TYPO3, you still can use Composer in between in order to install those tools and help you with the updates, I guess. And another thing that at least I often see when doing updates, it's not available yet for my target version. So for example, this one still is only for up to TYPO3 version 10.4. But on packages, you can go to the actual repository. Yeah. And if it's on GitHub, I'm not sure how it's on other platforms, but on GitHub you always have this Insights tab over there for every repository. And there you always can go to the network. And there you always have an overview of every single fork and what one did to it. So in this case, you can see, okay, Nicole stopped over here, but then Oliver Klee did some work on that. And you can inspect the branch names and the actual commit messages and stuff like that. And so it's possible for you to pick the actual current fork, for example, or get in contact with the developer who already put work in that. So you don't need to start for yourself, forking it and adding stuff to that. So that's also working for TYPO3 extensions if developers don't have an actual version, but another agency or freelancer already started to work on that. So that's an easy way to discover the work that's already invested from someone else.
Yeah. So the SVA, the black line, is already to version 12.
Yeah. So after doing that, depending on which version you've started with, you still had TypoScript for your own extensions where you've configured XSpace persistence, which was moved to a standalone PHP file. If in case you're using Rector to do the migration below version 2, then it will also scan the TypoScript files, as mentioned before, and will create a new configuration file out of that. But it won't split it for your extensions. So in case you have 10 custom extensions in your project and every single one does have this configuration, then you will receive one final file. So you need to split that up on your own afterwards. But the generation is already done for you. So it's still saving some time.
Rector does this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But maybe you are lucky and don't have those old versions anymore, so that's why you might not have noticed. Then, at least for me, the next thing, because I'm human, I want to see some progress. Until now, there was no progress visible to me as a user. I'm starting to clear the cache. I'm doing it on command line, but of course you can do the same on the TYPO3 install tool. And then fixing every error that occurs by hand, so that I have a first step. So now I have a minimum system that's already runnable, so I can already go to the install tool and have a very minimum system that's already on the target version. So that at least to me gives a good feeling that I'm on the right track. Then, in case you're using the TYPO3 extension scanner, either on command line or the install tool, I'm removing all the old entries from older updates. So the scanner might have false positives because it's very loose comparing stuff. So for example, I guess it's checking the ID property. Whenever you have a custom class with an ID, it will complain because ID was removed somewhere else. And then you can mark this part of code as false positive by adding these comment lines. And if you've done that before for an older update, then it's still there, and you might not know whether this previously false positive is now an actual positive result. So that's why I'm removing all of those. And
is there annotations in the?
Yeah, so you can either annotate the whole file to be ignored, or so for example, if you have files where you know there's no TYPO3 related code in there, but only business code, for example, then you could ignore the whole file. But you can also just ignore a specific line with an inline comment. Yeah, once I've cleaned things up, then I'm heading over to the scanner and check all the findings. And the nice thing about the scanner is that it will show you the actual changelog file. So it's the other way around. Some people might go to the changelog and read every single entry, which might be very exhausting. And that way it will show you only the changelog entries that it thinks affects you in your installation. So, yeah. After that, most of the manual or automated things is already done. Then I'm trying to open the TYPO3 backend, so the next level after the install tool, and solve every remaining issue so that I have an actual working backend, so that I also have something to show to the customer or project manager, whoever is responsible. So those people also have the good feeling that I'm making progress and that's going on. Because only saying, yeah, on my command line or my tool is saying everything's fine doesn't help anyone else. Yeah. Okay, that's...
The upgrade wizard, you do it always in the install tool or from the command line also?
Well, I'm personally doing everything on command line because I'm a command line guy, but it's of course also fine to do it through the install tool. But the benefit of the command line is that I have the history and that it's easier to execute and that I can easily document it in just copy and paste the command in an issue, and then colleagues can do the same or can add it to a bash script and run the update over and over again.
Make an upgrade script to do it all in one run.
Exactly, yeah. There's also a PHP project out there by some TYPO3 agency which allows you to script your updates. So most of the things I've mentioned here can be scripted if you're using the command line. And in case you do so, you probably are not the only person working on the project. So at least on our projects, people are constantly developing the project further while someone else is doing the updates. So for example, I'm doing the update and someone else is adding new features. And in case you script those updates, then I'll either merge or rebase. It's up to you what you prefer. Those new features into my update branch and just run all those tools again so I can cover those changes as well. Run the update wizards from time to time when I've imported the database from production, for example. And so I'm always staying on the current state of the project and not after working half a year, depending on the project, seeing all those features coming in and saying, oh no, I have to start from over again. But yeah, continuous integration, so constantly adding those things. Yeah, then depending on the version you're updating from, you might not have a site configuration yet. That's a situation when I'm now adding the actual site configuration.
It's from 8 to 9, I think.
Yeah. I guess so, yeah. I guess version 9 added it, but I'm not sure. Yeah. Then I'm also able to actually start the front end because now I have the site configuration. So just opening the home page and fixing all remaining bugs. Also, when I've said I'm opening the backend, it's just really opening backend, not clicking around. It's just, okay, I know the backend at least is working, not that everything in the backend is working. Same for front end, only start page or imprint thumb easy page, so that I know at least the rendering stack is barely working, but that doesn't mean that every single page is working yet. Once I've set this up, again, that's also for the good feeling for everyone involved. Then I'm going over to execute the tests. That might depend on who created the project before, whether there are tests, whether there are no tests. If there are tests, that's now the time where I start to execute the tests and fix tests within, fix issues within the tests or the code that's being tested. So that's why I find tests really important. And it doesn't matter what you're using for tests, whether it's manual testing, like writing down your feature sets and your click path, or whether you have automated tests like PHP unit, Codeception.
Child labor, doesn't matter. Yeah.
Separate, it doesn't matter, just that's the point where I'm executing the tests, whatever that means to you. And automating that helps in case you know you're making a lot of changes to the system or doing updates over the next year, then whatever fits your use case, try to automate that, because I guess testing is even more boring and frustrating and exhausting than doing the upgrade itself. So find the proper tool for you. Once that's done, I'm configuring, in case we didn't have a site configuration prior to the update, configuring the actual routing, trying to match all the existing routes. So for the SEO, and for the end user, so bookmarks and stuff like that still working, but also for the next steps that are coming ahead.
Is there a tool for that? Like from version 8 to 9, they dropped, did they introduce routing in TYPO3 frontend? So they drop real URL?
At least I'm not aware of any tooling, no. Anyone else is? No. I don't think anyone built that yet.
The documentation is, you have to read it really carefully.
Yeah. And still after, we said it was introduced in version 9, routing is still the thing, even with version 13, where I have the most issues with. Because it's not very chatty, it doesn't explain the issues to you. Sometimes just URLs won't build, and debugging it is very nasty, but yeah. We are a good community, go to the Slack channel somewhere else and ask questions if something is not working there. Then I'm going over and configure the actual sitemaps with the SEO extension, because that then allows me to have an overview of all the URLs of my system, so all the detail pages, all the pages. It's not too much work to configure that. I'm not an SEO expert, so I'm not sure whether that's necessary for that point of view, but it allows me as a developer to know all the URLs, all the public URLs for my system. So that helps me afterwards with further testing. Because then I'm crawling all those URLs from the sitemap. So I'm crawling the original content, so the original site, then afterwards the one from my development site with the updated version, so that's why the URLs should match, because that would ease things a lot. There are tools out there like SiteDiff, which do a comparison between two URLs on a source code level, so on HTML level. There are things on visual testing.
Yeah, Backstop is one I use. Backstop testing is JavaScript comparison tool.
Yeah.
So you make screenshots of the production environment. You give a list of links it should visit from production. And I wrote a small script to get from the TYPO3 database all the separate different types of content elements, all the types of plugins that are present in the system and used on pages. And it lists those pages, like 5 page IDs for each type of content element plugin. And I visit all those pages on production website, it makes screenshots, and then you visit all the same pages on the test environment, and then it compares the screenshots, makes a visual diff with like a slider thing, so you can see what changed or what pages are still broken. Or
yeah. So that way you don't need to click yourself through the page and find certain bugs, but these tools will say, okay, those URLs have differences and you only have to look into that. So that's pretty neat. So
for the sitemap, you're interested only in pages?
No, that's why I'm actually configuring the sitemap, so that I also have the detail pages for custom records and stuff like that. Yeah.
Otherwise you can get a lot of page paths from the real URL page cache tables, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, afterwards, yeah, the comparison, we have already covered that. And then, at least right now, we are still manually testing the backend features, because more or less most of our work nowadays is actually doing in the TYPO3 backend to make it more comfortable for the editors. And that's where we right now are working to add acceptance tests for the TYPO3 backend features, so that we have covered that and we don't need to remember our custom features and what to test there. But yeah, we are still lacking there, so that's still work in progress, like testing most oftenest. But yeah, so also that's where most complaints of customers are coming from after 2 weeks when the update got to production. It's more or less never about the front end, but always about the back end, because something is not as before. Either because TYPO3 changed its behavior, or because one of our custom features doesn't work anymore. So that's a thing one should cover, because most of the time the customer is just doing his job, and it's not working, so he's upset, and you might be working on something else right now, so you don't have the time, and that's very frustrating user experience for the editor and customer.
So if you can, stay close to the core, and don't build too much custom stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's more or less the workflow. So regarding the tools, we already covered Rector. Another great tool is PHP Stan, which does static code analysis. So it's inspecting your PHP code. Like the name suggests, only working for PHP, so no TypoScript or Fluid or anything like that. But it will tell you, for example, if you're calling a deprecated method, if you are still calling a method with an extra argument which is no longer supposed to be used, or with an invalid type or stuff like that. So if your testing isn't 100%, if Rector didn't have a certain rule, PHP Stan probably still will tell you that you still need to migrate something. So that's also a great tool. Then I've also tried to list some recommendations when using PHP Rector, and the sun is a bit... so in case you are most probably, or most often, at least for us, we are not only updating TYPO3, but also the PHP version. And when using Rector with up2, so you have 2 ways to update to a version. You can either use the update to configuration, which is pretty handy, but at least for PHP versions, it will contain all PHP versions below. So if you are upgrading to PHP 8.3, then it will check first of all the rules for 7.4, 8.0, 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3. So depending on your code size, you will wait for a very long time. And if you know you are updating from version 8.1 to 8.3, you know, okay, I only need the migration to 8.2 and 8.3. So then it will be much faster if you only add those 2 concrete versions instead of up to 8.3. TYPO3.
So I find it's also useful to, if you do like the PHP upgrade, a lot of stuff will come out, a lot of errors will appear. Like there's the one that's like the undefined array index thing. Like when there's you call in PHP 7, you call an array with an element and it's not there, then it returns false, I think, something. But in PHP 8.2, it's an exception. And it's nice to use a tool like Sentry or Bugsnag or some other service which you send exceptions to, and they just get collected, and you see a nice tag trace, and you can search them to more easily fix the errors or get a clear view. It's nicer to work with than just a PHP error log. So that's what I like to use as well.
Also in that regard, when I'm actually doing the front-end comparison, like visual regression testing with screenshots or with SiteDiff or something else, I'm at the beginning clearing the TYPO3 log files, and in the end I'm having a look at the TYPO3 log files, because they also often then contain warnings, you didn't migrate this TypoScript condition and stuff like that, so things that might not really affect the actual pages being rendered, but still issues within your installation. So that's also a good thing to have a look at during that phase, so you can find further issues and solve them. So yeah, and Rector can also be used for the TYPO3 updates, for updates of libraries like already mentioned, like PHP unit. And as also already shown, you can also configure your own rules to do further migrations. So that might also be handy for bigger companies doing their own extension stuff, being afraid of how to maintain that and just keeping backwards compatibility because they don't want to update all their projects. It's a mess. You could write or configure your own Rector rules, so that might shift the focus what's actually a breaking change. If I can have a Rector rule and automate these updates, is it still a breaking change, or are breaking changes now only conceptual changes which can't be automated? So that might also be an option for bigger agencies. And I'm really looking forward how that will shift the community in PHP. Maybe someday libraries and extensions will shift their own Rector rules, and maybe there will be a composer plugin which will check whether new rules were added and just execute them. I don't know. Yeah.
Sounds like a good idea, yeah.
So yeah, I've already mentioned that. So regarding the up to PHP and PHP, what I'm also doing, I've already mentioned, if you're working on the update while others are still working on the current installation, I'm trying to have small atomic commits. So I'm always using Git, and I would recommend that, but of course it's up to you. When using Git, I recommend having small atomic commits. So for example, every step you've seen probably is one Git commit. And that also has the benefit I can use them for documentation. So for example, the committing all those automated Rector changes contains the executed command. So I have a convention like executed within the Git commit message, and then intended the actual command I've run. So if I'm going over to another project, coming back in 2 weeks, I can rebase and just see, okay, that's the command I've run previously, reset, just execute once more, compare to the previous result, and then go ahead. So that's also very handy in order to replay your updates. Yeah. And in case you are coming up with your own Rector rules because something is missing, like TYPO3, inspire people to share open source, free software, share them either on your blog, post on GitHub issue, something like that. People will pick it up, will contribute it to the project, and even if not, it's still out there, so you for yourself have a reference. You can send a link to your colleagues so they can reuse the rules and stuff like that, so yeah. And yeah, that's also a thing. So we've covered the updates themselves. And as you've asked, who likes it? Is it fun? You actually can do it or can prepare for your future self, because we know it's hard. It's nothing we are looking forward to do. But very often you can make updates easier while adding stuff to your actual current project. So I've also have a blog post for that. If you go down, hopefully it's linked there, but I'm not sure. There were way too many things. No, yeah, way too much about that. So I've a blog post with, I guess, 2 concrete examples where we already were preparing for future TYPO3 versions. For example, TYPO3 at a certain point introduced the PSR14 events, which was a break in concept our implementation regarding the hooks used previously. But TYPO3 already had an event handler from XSpace. So it was already possible to create your own events because that was just a plain PHP class and just inject the XSpace event dispatcher in your code and dispatch this event. So you could already use that shiny new feature already in older versions. And once you update to the version actually supporting events without XSpace throughout the system, you nowadays could have written a rector rule to just replace your XSpace event dispatcher with the actual interface from PSR. Back then, you just need to replace one single namespace, and everything was already done. So no need to, yeah, but we were still introducing hooks everywhere, so now I need to migrate my own code so it's in line, stuff like that. So very often it's possible to already code for the future and for your updated versions, even if you're not on the version. That's not always possible with every feature, but no, that was actually before Rector existed, so yeah.
Well, you get the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at daniel-siepmann.de.
Yeah. It's a DE domain, but it's English content. Also, what's happening, especially with preparing for updates, is reading the change logs. And by that, I don't mean that you have to check every diff of every commit that's landing into TYPO3, but you, thanks to GitHub is always publishing an RSS feed for every branch on every repository. So what you can do is, if you're a fan of RSS, subscribe to that feed. If you're a fan of emails, use service like if this then that to convert that to emails. If you're more social media guy, there are Twitter bot, there's one in the Fediverse who are mirroring those feeds. So that by scrolling through your social media, you will see what's happening in TYPO3 core. And things you're not interested in, yeah, don't care. But if there's something interested, then you can have a deeper look, and then you already know in advance, that will change in future versions, and I can already start thinking about that, and how can I maybe use it already now, and prepare for that, so, yeah. And also very often what I've seen in TYPO3 Slack is that when people are complaining about TYPO3 updates being so hard, it's because they weren't aware that what they are using wasn't actually a public API. And TYPO3 is cleaning up in that area since some years, so making things more strict, defining, okay, that's not public API. It wasn't declared, but we now add internal or making it final or stuff like that. And people then are complaining, yeah, my code won't run anymore, and you don't offer a solution to that because you just say it was never intended to work like that. So reading those posts also allows you to know that prior doing the update and thinking about, okay, how should I solve that now? And then coming to an update, you might already have a solution what to do now. Like one big example was the switchable controller actions, which got removed. Who was upset by that? The removal of switchable control actions? No one. You all liked that change? Okay, cool. A lot of people were complaining, wow, nice, now nothing is working anymore because we were losing like Georg Ringer's news. That does provide an update wizard for that, but if you are using it in your own TypoScript, for example, that won't be updated. And for your own extensions, there also was no update wizard. And if you follow those things and also visit events and talk to the developers, then you might get a better idea of the concepts underneath and the ideas of what TYPO3 actually is trying to do. And also might see, okay, yeah, that's available, but it's probably not how it should be. And then you might already think about other solutions, like I did. So there's also a blog post, plugins as content elements, which I've published even before it was deprecated because I wasn't aware of that, but it was exactly like that, thinking about things and saying, yeah, that's probably not how it should be. And one TYPO3 at a certain point said, okay, that shouldn't be, and removed it. And I said, yeah, I don't care. I already have a solution to that. And in that case, it also is a different concept and mind shift. So it's good to know in advance and be in the loop and think about those kind of things. So, yeah.
More questions?
Hey, I think you mentioned PHP CS Fixer once? No. Okay, because I see people use it sometimes. Do you use it, and what is it?
It fixes common errors in PHP code, or mistypings, or does it do suggestions for better usage of PHP methods?
No, it's doing the coding guideline, right? PHP CS Fixer. So that's for the coding guideline. So it's how to format your actual source code. Indeed, tools like Rector don't care about how you format stuff. It's just about the actual code, what it's supposed to do, what methods to call. So it might mess up how it looks, and you might feel upset because, oh, I no longer can read that. Some people are more into it, some are less, and I won't open why you should have a coding guideline, but it makes sense. And this can help you. I run that after executing Rector in the next commit so that I actually still enjoy the code I'm working on after that. So yeah, I also would highly recommend to use a tool like that. There's also the PHP code sniffer, which has the advantage that it's not only for PHP, like the PHP CS fixer, but I'm not sure about the current state, so the person on that was no longer allowed by his company to work on that, so I guess there's now a fork from people out there. I guess it's very common in the WordPress community, and yeah, but it's not important which tool to use, just use some tool for that.
You also have PHP mess detector, which detects messy PHP code, or I think it also does functions that are too long.
That was the mess detector, but I guess that's deprecated. But PHP Stan also has an extension ecosystem, like for TYPO3, also for cognitive load. So what the mess detector did before. And it's also worth, once you're into that, have a look at on packages. You can also filter. So you can just open the search page, and then on the right you can filter, like, show me all TYPO3 CMS extensions. But you can also say, show me all PHP Stan extensions. And then you can walk through the list and check whether there's even more which you might want to use.
Who uses PHP Storm? Because there's a lot of plugins that can help with this.
Yeah,
pdepend also does things like the mess detector did, and it's still maintained.
Thanks. I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, cool.
Any more?
Would you prefer to run Rector about the whole installation with the extension, or do you recommend?
Depends on how big your installation is. Like if you have an old installation with 80 custom-made extensions.
All over, not a single extension then?
Depends how long it takes.
Ah, okay.
And yeah, you can run it on the whole TYPO3 conf.ext folder. It's not doesn't take that long. Like if you have like 80 extensions, it's not like hours or something. It's like a couple of minutes and then it's done. But you have to go over all the changes anyway, so you can do it step by step or.
Any other questions?
Do you feel empowered now more than before the talk, or?
Okay.
Well, good luck then.